City Jazz Sessions is about great music, arts, and entertainment. We are located in St. Louis, Missouri, and available to performance art lovers worldwide. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. You can email us at cityjazzsessions@gmail.com.
Agency and three, a trailblazer here in St. Louis, really behind a lot of things going on in the St. Louis music industry. So, Alonzo, we are so excited to have you. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Hey man, what's happening? Like, I'm so happy to be here. I'm honored, and we're gonna have fun.
Absolutely. So, first, I just kind of want to get into all your accomplishments, because I see you out here in so many different things, and people don't realize, like, when you go to festivals, you see the artist, but you don't really see the people behind the artist, the people managing the artist, the people managing their brand and things like that. So a lot of things that people see out here in the St. Louis music industry, you have a hand in a lot of things.
Yeah,
um, so tell us first about a few of the artists that you manage, and some of the events that you're currently involved in.
for sure. Excuse me. After you said that, I had to knock on wood because I was like, yeah, I am. um, I've been doing the management full time for the last I've been doing it full time for the last about 2 years, but I've been managing for about the last 7. Currently, I have a roster of about 10 different artists and bands that I facilitate for, that I either manage, do booking management, or brand management for. I currently hold, well, I started off, like a lot of people know me from being with Tonina for so long.
Right.
Tonina
Who
is,
is amazing. Please look up Tonina, because I just saw her before she moved to LA, and I was like, where have I been? Because I have missed out on all this amazingness. Like, it's, you don't get it from just seeing a video of her. You need to see her live.
yeah, for sure. Um, Tony's a gift. Tony's a flat out gift, once in a generational type of talent, and so I think that that's really what St. Louis really represents, is a lot of generational talent and a lot of heritage that a lot of us don't either we are naive to it, a lot of us don't know about it, or a few of us don't understand how much weight it ties into the art, the creative, and the arts and the music that we create now. Because if a lot of artists did kind of embrace the past of this city, I think we'll already be steps ahead of where we're trying to be.
Yeah.
But we got, like, when you talk about legends in the recording and in the music scene, like Oliver Sane and Johnny Johnson and Fontella Bass and Lady Jazz May Wheeler, and then,
Right.
like, and those are the ones that we've lost. Beanie, my dad, like, those are the ones we lost, and then we still have, and then like Kim Massey too. We just lost Big George
Right.
Rock, but then we also have the ones that still here, like Boo Boo Davis and Eric McSpadden and and Renee Smith and Marsha Evans. So, like, and I say all these names in our generation, my generation, some of us, and then the generation up under me, they're like, who? And it's like all of these, or a lot of these artists, are the bedrock of St. Louis music. And St. Louis music is a huge vein of American music. It is a lot of American roots in a lot of American music that we listen to today wouldn't even exist if it wasn't the pipeline that is St. Louis and St. Louis music. So say all that to tie it into the future and what we have. So people like Tonina, what was attracting me to Tony when I first met Tony when I was working at the Blues Museum, and she was doing a benefit event for for the museum when I was coming in as entertainment director. So I had nothing to do with that, but I kind of glimpsed. I'm like, oh my God, not only amazing vocalist, but instrumentalist. And
Right.
I hate to say that, but it's like, especially here in St. Louis, we don't have a lot of women musicians. We have an amazing treasure trove of women vocalists, but we don't have a lot of them that play instruments. So
Right.
you use the tool in addition to the vocals. So seeing a bassist, I was like, oh man, I gotta book her for one of my shows, and I ended up booking her for a Soulful Sunday at the museum where we did Sunday shows. And after she got done, I was just like, the universe is gonna put us back together, Cossack, because what you're doing is something that not only the city needs, but this overall just we need. I have a daughter, you know what I mean? So I thought that was like
Right.
the image and the symbolization of what she did, like speaks volumes. That's what the tagline. I never said this. I'm gonna say it on this show for the first time. I never explained this, but that's what the tagline, the Queen of the Future, came from. When I was like the Queen of the Future and always talking about Tonina, the Queen of the Future, Tonina, it was because I felt like she represented an image that the future, especially young women and young girls, needed to see. And if they saw that, that would inspire them to be among those voices, among those strengths, among that creativity of the future. So I felt like she was leading the future. So that's where the Queen of the Future thing came from. So I threw
Absolutely.
that tagline on her, and it was like, yeah, we're gonna get
And
back
it's
to,
stuck.
yeah, and it stuck. And I was just
Yeah.
like, the universe is gonna put us back together. Fast forward, the universe did put us back together because then I took a job at KDHX after leaving the Blues Museum for about a couple of months, or 8 months. I was at the Blues Museum, and I took a job as community engagement over at KDHX. When I gotta go into that, but me and Tony was already working in the cafe at that time. And so I took one of my responsibilities was being in charge of the KDHX Cafe, in addition to engagement programming on the stage, being the facilitator and the voice in the face. I was also in charge of kind of revamping the bar and the cafe down there. Tony happened to be one of the employees down there on the part-time side.
That's so funny.
So the universe put us back together. I was technically her boss a little bit, but not really, you know what I mean? So I was just like, I told you the universe was gonna put us back together. And during that time of us being at KDHX, she was voicing to me how her time at the dark room was. She was doing dark rooms on Tuesdays, I think it was, with her trio. And it was cool because she was able to, express her music and do her thing. But money wise and all that stuff, just like any other artist,
Right. Yeah.
pre-pandemic, especially pre-pandemic, it was hard, and we were getting bones, and we were like, "Oh, hey, we'll give you a 2 hour slot to pay and play for $80 in tips and stuff like that." So it always wasn't ideally in favor for the creators and the artists. And we talked a couple of times while we was at work, and she was just like, "Yeah, I'm so frustrated. I'm over it. I'm tired of playing these Tuesdays, barely making it, playing my band." And at this time, I had not got back into management yet, but I grew up managing my dad. My dad taught me the business when I was 9, about 8, 9 years old. I was writing his checks. I was reading
People may
contracts.
not know who your dad is.
Oh yeah, I'm bypassing.
Yes.
I
Right.
stuck it in because I had to be like tied into the story. But my dad is
Right.
the late great Henry Townsend. He's a St. Louis blues patriarch. He's our original Mississippi Delta bluesman. He is the longest recording American blues or American roots artist. Excuse me, the longest recording American roots artist um, currently to this date. Even though he passed in 2006, but he still holds that. But recording every
Since
decade.
1929, right?
1929.
Which that just blew me away when I read
Yeah.
it. Like, that
So
was like roaring 20.
he
My
even
goodness.
released. I know. So he's like, it's crazy when you break it down and actually talk about the layers. So like he either released a recording or was featured on a recording every decade since the 1920s all the way up until even after he passed. Because the last album, technically the last album, we had some remasters and some reissues that just got some stuff that just seen light of day come out last December. Mule and Blues Guitar and Piano from Washington University. Those are 2 new releases. But the original release was 2007. It was the last of the great Mississippi Delta Blues in the Lab in Dallas. That was the last recording technically that came out. That was fresh material, and it won a Grammy the next year in 2008.
Wow.
But when you talk about that, it's crazy because he won a Grammy the year after he passed away. But when he started his career, when he started playing music, Grammys didn't exist. You know what I mean? So it was something that was never strived for. and for blues artists like that in that time period. So this is something that was manufactured and created after he had already started doing his thing. And Lord behold, after he passed away, he won one. So, my dad was super old school. He played guitar, piano, and wrote all his own music, all vocals. And so he thrust me into learning the business at a young age. He used to always be like, Jesus took over his father's business when he was, I think, I can't remember. And it feels bad. I don't remember the word, but he was like, Jesus took over his father's business at 11 years old. And so I'm going to make sure. And so he was really hard on that. So I started I was writing checks. I'll be in Snooks writing checks. I'll be, and these people will be like blown away at this little kid writing the checks out. So I write checks. It was nerve-wracking at the time, but I contributed to who I am today. Like, I'm glad that he put me on it and stuff.
Absolutely.
Reading contracts. I was talking on the phone to bookers and concert and festival promoters. I remember talking to one of the people that were doing booking for the Chicago Blues Festival, and I was like 13, and I'm negotiating. And my dad was like, "You already let him know I don't come out the house for no less than $5,000. And I gotta pay for my mileage." And like, so he'll be over here chirping at me. He'll be chirping at me, and I'm over here like, "Yeah, so you have to give $5,000." No, you know what I mean?
So you literally have been doing this for like how many years if you started at 9?
Yeah, so for a long time. And I facilitate that too. So when I picked up that job at KDHX, I started working, or I had literally just left the Broadway Oyster Bar. My first artist that I started managing, picking it back up, was Manny. She goes by LLManny, and I met Manny as manager of the Broadway Oyster Bar. I was managing Oyster Bar for a couple of years, or I was working there and got thrust into a management role, thanks to John Johnson. And I was hiring host, and I hired Manny as my host in the interview. And after the fact, after I hired her, we'll be talking. She was like, Lord behold, she was into music, and she was doing rapping, and she was a hip hop, but her hip hop was different. She was like sampling soul, and it like Pusha Man was like a sample of I'm your it was Pusha. It was his name something else, but she sampled Pusha Man. So like it was like soul and hip hop. It blew me away, and it was like different, and I was just like, yes, awesome. And so Manny was the first artist that I finally took a limb on after starting up Knox Entertainment with my partner and my guy brother Marquise Knox. And so I picked up doing Manny. Fast forward, I always told Manny about Tony, and Manny was like, "You're gonna get her one day," and you like Tony needs you, and she knew a Tony too. So all this ties into KDHX, and she was saying that to me. She was like, "Yeah, I'm ready," and I was like, "Well, what do you think you deserve?" I'm like, I'm doing management now. Why don't you let me show you what you do? I was like, in my mind, before she even answered what she does, she deserved. I was like, in my mind, I think you should be making like $1,000 with your trio, easy, doing these shows. Like, and if you do a show Tuesday night or a little small place or cafe, like with tips added in, you should be averaging out like $500 to $800, not this little chicken feed. Like, and this was just like when she was just doing these small shows. I'm just like, the picture is even bigger than that, just 1,000, the 800 and 1,000 stuff. And I like, you deserve so much more, because what you're doing, not a lot of musicians or artists are doing that here in the city. And she just looked at me and she was like, okay. She was like, let's do it. I was like, so yeah. She was like, yeah. She was like, bring me the paper and like bring me an agreement and I'll sign it. And she's like, we'll do it. So I got a scope agreement and I came back to work the next day. This is all at KDHX in the office. This will be in my book one day. I came back upstairs. I came back the next day to work with the agreement. It was one page, super simple, a scope artist management agreement. And I gave it to her and she signed it, no questions asked, right away. And it was super simple, super compact. And then fast forward, and my goal, when I told her that day, I said, my goal is just, we're going to put you on a pedestal and just show everybody who the hell you are. And if nothing sticks after that, then maybe we should find a new line of work. And she laughed and she's like, all right, well, let's, she's like, whatever, let's do it. And if you know Tony, she's so carefree. So she's like, yeah, whatever, let's do it. And fast forward, the mission is accomplished. To me, it's somewhat accomplished. It's still so much work to do, and you never get content. But fast forward, she became one of the faces and one of the premier voices of this city. She had
Absolutely.
a banner right next to the in the mayor's office. So every time the mayor did a press conference, her face would be right there. And she would cringe about it. I would take screenshots and she was like, oh my God. But like,
I love it.
the mission was to put her on another level and go off, whether it's staying here. My thing is always 11 artists to stay here and help St. Louis get
Right.
back to where we need to be. But at the same time, I never fringe on someone that leaves or has to go. And
Hmm.
for Tony, she signed the Empire. So going out to LA is, even more beneficial for the label aspect of things. And now she gets to go out here and she's on a whole nother echelon and it's going from being, the queen of the future to being a GOAT. And so that's what we want. We want that so they can help come back and translate the stories of amazing artists like you and Manny and, and the rest that live in this city. So, yeah, I've
Absolutely.
been doing this for a
And
while, but
she's traveled. I mean, she's international artist. Like, I just want to put that out there for people who may not be familiar with her work. But she's toured internationally. I
she's,
think she was on
yeah,
like one of Obama's
I
lists.
was just gonna, yeah, she's
That was how I first heard about her.
Yeah, she's
When
on
she was
a
on
lot.
Obama's
She was
list.
on President Obama's Best of 2018 list. Her song "Historia de Amor" was on that list, and so I think like that was a huge stamp. That like that was like a solidifier. And then the next year, NPR came and put her as a slingshot artist and one of their top artists to watch in 2019. So like all of that just continued to put more equity in the game and put more weight in gold. And that's why I call her that my nickname. I'm like, what's up, gold? Because that's what like it put more weight in what she was and what she represented. And so now
Absolutely.
fast forward, she's one of the premier artists that is St. Louis bred. And so that helps the overall mission for us because now people are gonna come. We continue to have to put in this work, but people are going to understand, the voices that resonate that come out of this city and the talent and the pureness that come from that heritage. And all we just need is our city to kind of really help push that narrative. And then,
Right. But
some,
kudos to you for seeing that her uniqueness, her talent, and really pushing that out because you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't really have anyone behind you promoting you or helping to brand you, um, negotiate and things like that, it's not, you're not going to get
yeah,
as far.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
So
But
it's definitely her talent, but it also speaks to your work as well.
absolutely, I do have to stop and smell roses sometimes because I don't acknowledge myself a lot. I like when other people do it, but I don't. So you know what I mean. So it does feel amazing, but I also tied it into I tell artists all the time to also learn every role of the position to help your career when it comes to music. And what I mean by that, learn what a manager does, learn what PR does, do a lot of this work yourself. Like I don't like when artists, especially new artists, immediately think that they need a manager. And because
Because they can't afford
you
him.
don't that too. But at the same time, it's just like you don't. My rule is you don't need a manager until you're overwhelmed. Other than that, do the work. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Don't be
Okay.
lazy. Do the work, and then that way, when you do the work, when it is time to hand that stuff over to somebody like me or whoever, you know what to expect from that person that you're handing it over to because you've done the work, you've seen it, you 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 know this stuff. It's your tool, so then you're not like, oh well, yeah, whatever. Like he knows that stuff, like me. Like
Mhm.
yeah, it's all well and good sometimes and not know every aspect of it, but you want to familiarize yourself with as much of it as you can and do as much of the work as you can because that way the manager you hire is slacking or BSing you around because you've done the work and you know what it takes and you know what you expect not only from yourself but someone that you hand that work over to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there's a couple festivals coming up I want to hit on just to make sure everybody has those dates. There's the Music at the Intersection that is September, I think, 10th through the 12th. And
Yeah.
aren't you hosting one night? Aren't you emceeing one night?
Yeah, so I'm emceeing the Big Top on Sunday, all day Sunday. I'll be at the Big
Okay.
Top. Um, it's gonna
I
be
think that's the night I'm coming. I'm
that's
saying
it's that lineup is stacked though at the big top. It's some amazing artists both nationally and locally. And I, I say locally, but we have to also remind ourselves that a lot of our local artists are national and international recording artists too, and that sometimes gets mixed in the sauce when we use that local word and we tie in Susan events like that. That's going to be another thing that helps us get to the next level is making sure that we talk to each other and we showcase each other as national and international recording acts when we have that in our lanes. And for the ones that's trying to get there, just some of St. Louis is elite, but that's something that we discount, or sometimes people discount us because they use that local, and a lot of us are touring nationally and internationally and should be paid the same way that you're going to pay a national act to come to our city. So, and luckily, that's not no shade because that's something that music at the intersection of the Kransberg Art Foundation is, making sure that they take into consideration. So hats off to them, but that just umbrellas is beyond them. But it's a lot of national and local artists coming to that Sunday, and Selwyn Birchwood, who's a awesome, amazing young figure of the blues, Junior Clooney, O'Keys, and the phenom Marquise Knox is going to be there on Sunday.
Yes, and we're going to have him on, I think, in a couple weeks.
And for those who haven't seen Marquise or know Marquise, I think by now a lot of St. Louis knows, but if you don't, man, I suggest you get an opportunity to go and see him live. His music is on all type of platforms, but I encourage you to see this 30-year-old dude live because he's like another one that falls into that category like somebody like Tonina is somebody that's just once in a lifetime that's just bred with a gift, and his is the blues, is being that torch carrier of the blues, both musically anyway. And so, Absolutely. Yeah, Sunday is going to be really dope. And then Tonina is playing that Friday. She's a part of the kickoff day. And she's playing at the Fox on September the 10th. And she's playing before the legendary, she's playing before Gregory Porter and, oh God, I'm having a mind freeze, but it's gonna come back to me in a minute, and I should have a mind freeze because this dude is legendary, and I know his name. I'm just having a brain freeze right now. But she's playing at 7, and she's Roy Ayers. Oh my God, yeah, she's playing before Roy Ayers, the legend, and she might even get to do a song with him too that day. So like, that's gonna be mind blowing. But that whole weekend is gonna be super cool. Layla Hathaway coming in from town, like, it's gonna be super cool.
Yeah, and so the whole idea behind the festival is to really celebrate local artists, artists that are currently here or from here. I know Keon Harold is going to be there. He's interviewed him before. So it's going to be a really great weekend, and I hope everybody checks it out because I think it's really good for our city.
They did a great job with the lineup because, like you said, the locals obviously are connected to St. Louis, but all the national acts have somewhat of a connection to St. Louis. Every single act has something to do with St. Louis. Either they're natives or they're connected in some way. So I think that's really cool for them to tie that in. So that's really dope. But before that, we got Frizz Fest coming up this Saturday.
Yes, I did not want to miss that either. So that is Saturday?
This Saturday at Tower Grove Park, 1 to 5. It is the Midwest's fastest growing natural beauty festival, and it's in its 5th year, and it's next level. It's next level. It's amazing. It's founded and led by Leslie Hughes, along with her brother Ricky Hughes and his wife Valerie, and I'm joining and partnering up with the team for the first time this year with the Townsend Agency. We're helping facilitate and manage the entertainment this year, the entertainment stage, and we have 3 amazing pieces of St. Louis's gold. We have the powerhouse. He's 21 years old. He's not little anymore, but you know him by little Dylan, but he's Dylan Triplett.
Who I just saw at his 21st birthday celebration.
When he did
Tennessee Whiskey, I was like, I'm never going to be able to sing that song again because he just blew me away.
Dylan's amazing, and he's
so good. Check this out.
He's born for this, and Um, one of the things I contribute to artists is charisma, or just people in general is charisma. And sometimes you have it and you don't, and you can't teach it. And he falls into that boat. Dylan, you can't teach that. And so he's an amazing vocalist if you ever heard him. So he's going to be at Frizz Fest this Saturday. Then we have the amazing saxophonist and the impeccable Rhoda G.
Oh
Rhoda G's going
yeah.
to come and she's going to do a dance party, and it's going to be amazing. Every time she comes out, crowds, of course, they love her. She's a magnet. She radiates, and she's a multiple time Showtime at the Apollo winner,
Oh
first
wow.
place winner. So you definitely have to check Rhoda if you haven't seen Rhoda G. She's amazing. And
I
then
was actually we did a gig. We were at the same gig
yeah,
too. Yeah, like this summer actually. But yeah, she's awesome.
yeah, she's amazing. And then we're going to cap it off with Lydia Caesar, who's another amazing local vocalist. Um,
Absolutely.
Born in New York and bred here in St. Louis. And Lydia's been on the scene for quite a while doing some amazing work. And a lot of her songs have been picked up on networks like TNT. So she does a great catalog of R&B and soul. And so Lydia's going to be taking the stage on Saturday as well. I think she's doing a really special acoustic set. And so she's playing something really dope. So I'm excited for her. And then we spent it with DJ Nico Marie, who's one of the premier DJs in the city. And so I'm really excited for Saturday. And then we got a lot of great stuff. We got they're gonna have pony rides. It's gonna be over. I think that it's the largest vendor list in the festivals
Wow.
in the festivals in inception. I think we're like over 30, 35 vendors this year, I think. So I know for a fact it's the largest vendors we've had or Frizz Fest has ever had. We're going to have a lot of food trucks, and we have a sponsor this year, an alcoholic sponsor, Four Hands Brewing Company, who is
Nice.
Four Hands has been doing some amazing bridge building for this city in the last couple of years, and they've really been putting their money where their mouth is and investing in the arts and the creatives
Hmm.
and just investing in St. Louis as a whole. So Four Hands jumped
Right.
on and is straight powering Frizz Fest this year, and they're doing something super cool. So they're gonna bring out their truck. They're selling, like I said, they're selling beverages. Frizz Fest has never had an alcoholic um, vendor, so they're selling beverages, but 30% of everything that they sell on Saturday, they're giving back to Frizz Fest, which is a non-for-profit.
Nice. Wow.
Frizzy by Nature, which is not for profit. So that is super cool. So it's gonna be hot. So make sure you bring water, but at the same time, make sure y'all drink, have fun,
Right.
because
That's
it all goes back to an amazing cause. So Four Hands is sponsoring St. Louis Children's Hospital is a sponsor. Frizz Fest is really next level this year, and I think it's gonna be amazing being at Tower Grove Park and really showcasing having just all different ages and walks of life and races and all this all in
right.
the Tower Grove celebrating natural beauty and celebrating yourself and self-confidence and love. It's gonna be dope.
Right. And I did share on the City Jazz Sessions Facebook, and you guys can also check out Alonzo's pages and you'll see a link there, but definitely check that out.
For sure.
So there's another thing that's going on at the History Museum that you were
Yeah.
recently interviewed about.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. It's a new exhibit that really focuses on the history of music in
Mm-hmm.
our great states and all the legendary artists like your dad. So tell us a little bit about that exhibit and how you got involved with it.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's a long time coming. It's called St. Louis Sound. It encompasses the history of St. Louis music and the St. Louis music scene, all the way up from the late 1800s to today. It's an amazing exhibit. It is super in depth. It kicks off at the Missouri History Museum, I believe, this Friday. I got a chance to walk through on Monday, doing a segment from Fox 2 in the morning, and it was still putting some finishing touches on it, so still wasn't even done as a Monday. But from what I saw, it is going to it is going to knock a lot of people's socks off just because of so much of the artifacts that are
Right.
actually there that we'll actually get to see. Like this is really in depth. How I got involved was my dad had a piano in our house for that piano is older than me. It was there before even I was born. And the year that my dad won the Grammy and I was on the LA, our house got vandalized. And one of the things that got vandalized was the piano. It had some water damage and some other stuff done to it. And so the first thing that came to my mind was my dad always had a relationship with the Missouri History Museum. He had some stuff that they had already actually had,
Oh,
some jumpsuits and stuff that he performed in. Um, so they already had some artifacts, and he already had a piece in the history museum. So it was a relationship there already, and I reached out to someone that I knew that was still connected there. She's like my godmom now, but her name is Jacqueline Dace, and she's actually the executive director over at St. Louis Artworks right now. But at the time, she worked for the Missouri History Museum, and I called her and I was like, "Hey," I told her what happened to the piano, and I'm like, Do you think that it's something that could you could do, or that the museum, this is something
mm-hmm.
that the museum can hold on to until figure out how to bring it back to life?" And I called her that day. She came the next day with a truck to come pick it up, and so I donated it to the
Oh,
museum. I donated it to the History Museum back in 2008. They've been sitting on it this entire time, probably till about 3 years ago. Andrew Wanko, who's an awesome dude over at the History Museum, he's the one that actually led putting together this exhibit, St. Louis Sound. And he reached out to me about the piano and knew of its history, and
right.
said, "Hey, that it's a fine time. We're doing this." They said, "Hey, we're doing this exhibit. We're putting it together. We want to include the music, the piano, and we want to figure out how we can get this thing restored and preserved." And so me and Marquise went up to the History Museum and sat down with him and came up with a plan, and we came up with a piano fundraiser. We did a piano fundraiser partnership with the History Museum, with the Missouri History Museum, in partnership with Knox Entertainment, and it was me and Marquise in the museum, and we did a fundraiser at BB's Jazz Blues and Soups on a Sunday, and we did an all-day music event. It was like from noon until 6, and Tonina was there. Kim Massey came and performed. Silver Cloud, Gene Dawes Bradford. I mean, we had just a host of artists that were down for the cause and helped us raise money. It was a $20 ticket, and people donated. We had raffle prizes.
Wow.
The St. Louis Blues helped out, and we had a used game stick, hockey stick, and we auctioned it off. It was super dope, and so we raised um, close to in addition to all the proceeds from the whole event went, excuse me, to the restoration and went to the piano fundraiser. And on that day alone, we raised about 10,000, and then we continued to keep the donations rolling throughout the rest of the year. And so we had to raise our amount of close to about $25,000. The goal was 25, and that included shipping the piano out of out of St. Louis, for it to be restored and preserved, because a lot of people think that you can really just find a piano maker and just have it kind of at least restored. But when you
Mm-hmm.
have a piece of history or a piece of something like the piano represented, it also has to go through a restoration process in addition to a preservation process. So that costs us a lot of money. So I think the piano was shipped out to North Carolina, if I remember, for someone to do the preservation and the restoration, kept it in its original intact condition. And
Right.
fast forward, the piano is ready, and so it's gonna be on exhibit right next to my dad. The suit I was telling you about, the old
Yeah.
jumpsuit, the jumpsuits there, the story of the piano. My dad wrote in permanent Sharpie marker the keys on each key, trying to get me to learn the piano when I was a kid. So it's A, B,
Yeah.
C, D all the way down. The
Oh my
keys, uh,
gosh.
that's still there. So they preserved it and restored it like to a T, to its original concept. It's really amazing, and I'm proud that I was able to see what happened all the way through, and the story really came full circle. And just it's I encourage everyone to go and see that exhibit. I think it starts on Friday, but it's only going into January. So we got a couple of months, but I encourage everyone to go and see that exhibit because you're going to be like really proud of the scene, and then you're going to
Right.
really understand and embrace the history of the music that you're carrying on, from hip hop to soul to blues to gospel. Lady Jazz May Wheeler, full dresses in there, like, so gospel and jazz is represented, like stuff like that is going to make you for creators and artists. It's going to
Mhm.
inspire you to get better and know what you really are representing in this city. And I think it also should help us wire this music into our infrastructure, and we can help make the city where it needs to be, like Chicago and Nashville and
Mhm.
Boston and New Orleans, where we can build and create here, have creatives and film and arts tax breaks, so we can attract the industry here in addition to build our own industry here and be able to have this as a major recording and creative hub. And we can do that, and we have the history to be able to do that. We just need administration to help us take this on. And I think that with the future and administration that we have now, with like Tashara, who's an amazing fresh start, hopefully we can start getting that ball rolling so we can start protecting the creatives and getting them to want to stay here because we have an industry.
Mhm. Right. Yeah. So I feel like the legacy that your dad left, I mean, being a Grammy award winner, well, he wasn't even when he died, but all the work that he put in, but the legacy that he left in general, that seems to fuel your passion for this city and making it, returning it back to its glory as far as like the music scene. Yeah.
I smile because that's the mission.
Mhm.
It took me a while to figure out the mission and get it back on. After my dad passed, I was out to sing, or I wasn't doing anything with blues or anything. I was just raising my daughter at the time, and I was so unplugged. I didn't even listen to a lot of my dad's music because it was like it still would hit. So I really didn't start getting back into the scene until 2000. I mean, until about I was 25, 26, and Jeremy Siegel Moss, who is our president of the St. Louis Blues Society, he does this event called the Baby Blues Showcase, which is for artists that do blues and roots music all under the age of 30. And they would do it every year in November. And he was the one that really pulled me back out into the scene. And I can't. And he's like, "Why don't you host this event?" And his partner, they do a group called the Bottoms Up Blues Gang. Carrie Liston, she was the MC for the event, and he like, "You should do it with Carrie." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And I did it, and I was so meek. Like I said, I was like, "Hey, welcome everybody." You know what I mean? Like I hadn't did anything in
He
random.
is not like that anymore, y'all. Just by the way.
2 years later, it took me maybe 2 years, and Carrie kept training me too. Carrie was like, "You need to bring it from her. You need to be confident. You walk in the light of your dad. You got shoes to fill, so like you gotta like roar." And 2 years later, like the way that I MC now was how I was doing
Mhm.
like the Baby Blue Showcase, and that put me back on. And people, they were like, "This is the dude I need. This is the guy
Mhm.
we need," because of the voice and me being so loud about everything that we was doing and what we represented. And then that really sparked me because I started getting it again, and people were talking about, this is what my dad wanted me to do, and this is what he was hoping for. And I always knew that. I just had to figure out where my place was at. But his dream was to make sure that his music and his way of life for a lot of blues artists, both men and women, didn't die. For a long time, the blues was Mother Blues is the mother of all genres, but its actual roots were pushed to the wayside. People didn't really pay attention to it. It was really uplifted by a lot of foreigners and Europeans overseas, and a lot of white audiences, and
Mhm.
um, people that wanted to learn and carry on the music was predominantly white. And for a lot of blues artists, they didn't shy away from that because at least they felt like someone was learning and carrying on the music. But it was always about having people that looked like them and that came from the same stories and the same struggle and the same heritage of being able to tell these stories and carry on this music and talk about people like my dad and
Mhm.
Robert Jr. Lockwood and Honey Boy Edwards and Homesick James and these people that's literally just giants and put bricks into American music that a lot of us don't know. A lot of them don't know those names. They think of blues, they think of BB King. And all respect and love to BB, but that's not the ideal story of the blues. He was a vessel that continued to carry on that story, but the blues is a Mississippi Delta. It was born in the
Right.
Mississippi Delta. So his dream was to make sure that my dad wanted that and his music and that story to carry on in some youthful way or form.
Mhm.
And so I had to finally figure that out. And once I did figure it out, I'm like, let's do it, let's
Right.
go. And so like
Well, let me ask.
that's where my dream is to continue to do that,
Let me
still
ask you a
walking
question.
in that management role, but bring that, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Reading your bio, there are so many things that you have placed in your bio that you do. How do you determine which items that bubble to the top and that you handle first? Like you're managing somebody, and then you're performing music, and then you're, DJing, and what? How do you? What is that thought process to? What bubbles up to the top? What gets for your attention first?
My management and my artist is primary top number one. Um, what I did, that what facilitates, and that's what obviously fuels and puts money into the machine. But those doing that work is my primary focus, especially now in the company and the management. And that also all falls, it kind of falls into the mission, because if I take care of them and I do my job doing that, that facilitates the dream, and the mission is making sure this city and the music scene is flourishing and thriving, and fresh voices and faces are coming out and being seen and having opportunities to be on stages, actually come away with something from it, not only with just money, but and actually seeing a profit, but coming away with fan base and with a foundation where people want to be hungry for them and see them even more. And then that facilitates, the overall heartbeat, which is, me doing the blues, because when people see that stuff and they follow me, then they dig too into the bio, or they look for my name and find out, they're like, oh, Henry Townsend, oh, okay, blues, oh, it's a blues society. And then that puts more focus on them and that work as well. But personally, it's the management, it's the St. Louis Blues Society and the Blues Mission, and it goes and kind of trickles down from there. But a lot of my days, I find myself on a hamster wheel. I'm just going, and I'm not going anywhere specifically, but I'm just going. And as long as I'm going, I feel somewhat good. But I
So
try to stay off the hamster wheel.
yeah. So you were
Not too
saying
much.
that you wanted to see St. Louis develop into a musical hub, and what is it that you see? What are the milestones that mark that we've made that we've achieved that?
The mark and the milestone, I mean, some of it we've seen because we have artists that like Tonina back, for example, they get spotlighted on President Barack Obama's best of list. This is something that probably a lot of artists, especially her, didn't think of or dream of what happened at that time. So it's opportunities like that. It's opportunities on being um, on bigger and heavier stages, like people like Nando STL. Like I love Nando, and Nando's a fresh rising hip hop artist. And like, a lot of them didn't know who he was, but he hustles and he facilitates his music and he has a message. And he can go on a big stage like somewhere down in the Foundry and sell out a show and have 350 people come down and see him, and people from the outside before then probably didn't know of him or whatever. So when we had those opportunities, or we had somebody like Mvstermind, who's an amazing hip hop artist and had a shoe made by Dr. Scholl's, his own custom shoe.
Wow.
Like a hip hop artist, one of the first hip hop artists with a shoe, no matter whose the brand is, but it's like they made a dream happen and let him sketch out his own shoe, and they made 500 of them, and now one of them you can find on eBay going for like $1,000. That's what
Wow.
that's what the mission is. But the bigger picture of the painting is going to be once we go down the street in St. Louis and it's like Atlanta, and you see these independent artists on every corner talking about the next release or the next mixtape. We see paintings of different blues artists in different streets downtown named after legendary blues artists or legendary musicians from St. Louis in general. The Ike and Tina Turner review was right down on West Florissant, and the building still stands. You know what I mean? At Club Imperial. like, that's West Florissant, but that stretch could easily be, the Soul Review Avenue or whatever. Like, that's what's going to help us get into another echelon and really be wired in
So
and showcase
so
and
how are
put
we
on
going
those.
to get these people to start wanting to come here and do recording? What is it that we need to have as in St. Louis that's going to
Uh,
attract people from around the globe to want to come here and record and do their music?
a lot of the work belongs to us. It's on us, on musicians and artists to, um, let's stop talking about competition. Competition is cool, whatever, but sometimes the competition gets mistaken for envy, and we become undeniable when there's multiple voices and multiple faces. A long time, a lot of people wanted the Nelly effect, and I love Nelly, but the Nelly effect and the Nelly effect is being the face and being the person that you, um, correlate when you think of a city, when you think of St. Louis. So when people thought of St. Louis, they automatically, oh, Nelly. And then so other artists that grow and want to be, and younger artists and new rising artists, they get that concept. Some of them get that concept. A lot of them get that concept, and they run with it and think that's what success is being the face and being the name when you correlate to St. Louis, and that's not what the success is. And we pull each other up, and we work together, we collab together. I'm not saying that we got to be best friends. It's like, yeah, we hang together, but embrace each other's creativity, embrace each other's music, pull each other up, work with each other, do songs together, do shows together, cross pollinate each other's fan bases, and that's gonna make that fan base continue to love you. But then they're plugged into this artist too, and now that's extra equity in everything that we're doing. So the more that we embrace that ideal, and we have that work to do because a lot of these artists haven't embraced that now. So it's, the sooner we embrace that idea and start talking about pulling each other up and collaborating and making all of us heard, then we start winning and we start talking. And then that's again, go see St. Louis Sound and talk about the heritage and the history that you're actually representing. Sample some of these artists and know about, um, like that. Sample some of these artists and like Fatella Bass, like,
Right.
that's Rescue Me. That's not Aretha Franklin. You know what I mean? So you learn a lot of your history and a lot of the legends that come from her, attach them to the music that you're making now, and you know what I mean, take off.
So do
But
we
until
have
we
the
start
technical
doing that,
expertise? Do we have the technical expertise to make all of this happen here
some
in
of it
St.
we do.
Louis?
Some of it we do. A lot of we have a lot of great, studios, Fat Buddha, you know what I mean, Sawhorse, and a lot of places that we can go in and record and facilitate. Gaslight, but
Mhm.
can we make and press vinyls and records out of St. Louis yet? No, we don't have that capability, and that's what we need to be able to do. We need to be able not only to go in and record and make music, we also need to be able to have the opportunity in the process and the foundation of being able to press and push a lot of that out of our city and have that capability. And that's what we have to attract. That's what we need to help build. A lot of that stuff will help when we have tax breaks and on the arts and in the film world. And a lot of the education on that I have to do more for myself too. But New Orleans have these. They attract the industries to come in and do film work and to make TV shows, to make movies, for their music, for their musicians, because these industries are able to come in and they're able to make, the tax breaks help out in the facilitation. Nashville's the same way. Chicago's the same way. Chicago City Hall has an office, the special events and cultural affairs. Their office is what books the Chicago Blues Festival. That office is what books this Chicago Jazz Fest. We have to have that's infrastructure built into their city, and that's what we need. That's what we want. That's what we have to have in order to make us on that same level and make our artists want to stay and build and attract industries to come here and build.
So one of the things that I was thinking was um, uh, five-star venues that people want to come play. Do we have any of those in St. Louis? And what is the process if we don't have? What is the process of building that five-star venue that people go, I want to play that? Like, people want to play Madison Square Garden. People want to
Yeah,
play, those big venues that have a big history behind them.
yeah. And I think for a long time, the problem was, and this was pre-COVID, and COVID, it was a gift and a curse, especially for our industry, because COVID cleaned the slate in our industry, and it made the power kind of fall a little bit more back into the artists' hands, independent artists, because they started making these venues. Obviously, the venues were shuttering. These venues started understanding how much weight and beneficial these musicians are to them in their bottom line. And then we started realizing how beneficial and how heavy and how much weight that we have in their bottom line. But um, a lot of that falls into the doors and the gates were closed to a lot of artists, especially independent artists, especially younger artists in this city. You had to either know somebody, you had to rub elbows with somebody, you had to be in a certain clique in order to be able to facilitate in certain venues. You had sometimes you had to grease the right palm, even just to get into grease the gatekeeper just to get into a place like the pageant. You know what I mean? And so it wasn't readily available for a lot of artists, or if you didn't have someone that will facilitate, like myself, that knows the angles or knows some people and has a level of respect, then those doors will be shut unless somebody reached out to you and said they want to do the open for them for $100, you know what I mean, something like that. But now the game changes because artists understand how beneficial people like me are. I'm not just hearing a middleman that they have to, like, oh man, that's another 10, that's another 15 or 20% that I got to give out. And they're like, oh, okay, this person, whether it's me or anyone else in the management, they're like, this person understands what the environment is, and they're going to help me cut through some of that slack. So, like a prime example was somebody like Lakes the Voice. I love Lakes, and Lakes is an amazing artist, and he's been on the scene for a long time. A lot of artists for a number of years, and he's a younger artist, amazing voice. A lot of people probably wouldn't know of him, but he has a lot. He has music on all major streaming platforms. Great guy. He just needed an opportunity and never had an opportunity. And so, like, I'm facilitating with venues like Blue Strawberry at the time, and Off Broadway, and Delmar Hall, stuff like that. And so the Blue Strawberry aspect is just like some artists you got to look at and say all they need is a shot, but you can't put them in a heavy venue, but put them in this venue so that way other promoters and facilitators will see them, and then give them opportunity on festivals and bigger things, and they're like, oh man, that dude was awesome. So that's my approach, is pulling each other up, pulling out artists that you don't necessarily have to have a long-standing relationship or had a long-standing relationship with, and put them on bills and opportunities so they can be showcased. We do have some venues here, but it's not many, and a lot of the venues that we did have, they were shuttered, and artists didn't have access. Now we have access, or either we have people that has the access and that will help facilitate them to get to those promised lands. But the artists also have to understand that you can't shoot straight for Del Hall either. You can't shoot straight for the pageant either. You have to plant seeds, and you have to fill up a space that you know you can fill out, and have a 300 place venue, and pack it and have that on your resume that you sold out BBs, that you sold out Blue Strawberry. And that's going to get the attention of every single other promoter. They're going to want you. I have that example with Zeta Linus right now. Zeta is fresh, and she just started doing a lot of stuff on the scene. She's been playing at local legends for a number of years, but never was a heavy voice. And me and her started working together, and she did a show at the Foundry, the Reflections of Amy Winehouse show. And like literally 4 times a month, I'm getting a call from someone that I don't know that wants to work with Zeta or wants to have her on a festival bill or on the show. And that's someone that they didn't know last year. So it takes just facilitating and pulling each other up.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that because I don't know who I was talking to, but I was another singer, and he was just saying how, until St. Louis artists start helping each other out, like, until we start supporting each other, who else is going to do it? Like, if we start doing it, we can show people how it's done. And I feel like I was in my own little bubble, and I talked to you about this, just doing my own thing here and there, and I was not really, building relationship with other artists or musicians or people in the music industry besides the people who I already worked with or the venues I was already with. And then that just really struck me that, you know, we really want our city to put on, like, we need to band together. And we're so much stronger together, working together, promoting each other, building each other up. Like you said, sharing each other's work, because I may know about someone that the rest of the public, they have no idea about. But if I share with my fan base, then they know. And it just helps the industry as a whole, you know, to get that out there.
It helps tremendously. Like, real quick, I'll say another prime example of that was I've been Mastermind's brand manager for about 3 years, 2 years now, about 2 years, almost three. Man, I showed you the hamster wheel I've been on. But I've been Mastermind's brand manager for about 3 years now. And so a lot of people knew that I was working with Mastermind. They know, you know, all of that stuff are kind of connected, especially in the scene. And this past year, you know, back in April, I started working with and helped facilitate, you know, a show for Nando STL. And on the outside looking in, people would think that was that I was creating, that I was doing anarchy, that I was, you know, that I was doing mutiny. Because they're like, well, wait a minute, don't you work with Mastermind and he a hip hop artist? Why would you work with another hip hop artist? Because that's competition. It's not competition, because my mission is what we already know, but my mission is St. Louis, you know, the overall scene, all of us to build up. So when Nando wins, Mastermind wins, you know what I mean? Because that's another voice about St. Louis hip hop. That's not stepping on the toes of Mastermind. And as a matter of fact, you know, those are two different voices of the streets of St. Louis. But, you know, they're in the same realm somewhat, you know, because they're in hip hop, they're in soul, they're in hip hop soul, and they're indie hip hop artists. So they'll be like, wait a minute, how did that work? What did Mastermind say about that? Well, I didn't have for permission, because my job is the overall scene of St. Louis music, because I know when Nando's win, and I know what he brings to the table, and I know what he represents, and I watched him hustle. Nando was on my radar before we even met, and a lot of artists be on my radar before we even met. Like, I am a student of St. Louis music, so a lot of artists I've listened to, and then I meet them later on, and they're like, man, I've been wanting to meet you for so long. And I'm like, man, I've been known of you, but I've been wanting to meet you too, whatever. So I was a fan of Nando already, but I knew what he brought to the table. I knew that he had so much substance, just like Mastermind, and I knew that he wasn't looking for a moment. And what a moment is, somebody just trying to make a hit and be like, man, I made Ricky Bobby or whatever, you know, like he's a student of the game. So when Nando wins, again, Mastermind wins. So that was a prime example of my thinking, and I felt like if I'm pulling him up, I'm gonna pull him up too. I'm not gonna shut the window off or shut my services off or shut the light off to anyone that wants this city to win and that believes in the overall scene.
So
I got you.
So let me. One of the things that concerns that I have issue, or like I said, I don't want to say issues. I want to put it in a negative light. I want to put it in a more questioning light. Is that I don't get the feeling that once people make it out of St. Louis, that they turn around and put back into St. Louis.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree with you 100%. And this may rub some people the wrong way, but it's facts. And we have a lot of faces right now that could be helping this mission, that are from St. Louis, that have not necessarily consistently reached back. But we do have artists that do reach back, and so I'm not gonna backhand. Like, you know, like Smino, he comes and he does, you know, the Christmas every year, and he puts on a lot of other artists on certain degrees. But, you know, we all the consistency word, you know, we could probably argue about that. But, you know, we also have people that say, well, is it his job? Does he owe this city? Nah, not necessarily. But, you know what I mean? If you believe in what this city represents and you speak on it in your music or you speak on it in your story, then yes, in my opinion, you do have an obligation. And a lot of artists forget that obligation. And it goes back all the way back to, you know, again, to the Nelly days. Like, I love Nelly and I love what he's done for the city and what he represents. But, you know, consistently, can we say that he has been to help the mission that we're on now? No, not really. But does he owe it? Probably not. But does he have an obligation? We would say yeah. But, you know, that's what that's what the mission also is now, especially for me. It's changing the culture, changing the environment, changing the way that we think about this scene of St. Louis music. Because again, the treasure is here, the heritage is here. You go back, you're going to talk about. You can go back all the way to Scott Joplin if you want to, but the gold is here. So the day that you are start embracing the history and the message and start putting each other up, to have that work that we've been trying to talk, that we've been talking about and talk about, that we've been trying to change for so long, it'll change in a heartbeat. But it takes each other. And it takes believing in each other, breathing life into each other, collaborating with each other. Like I said, you don't have to take pictures and say, hey, man, what's up? But do invest in each other, do collaborate, do pull each other up. Because again, the more faces and the more voices, the more we become undeniable.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know we have to wind down in just a bit. I do want to bring a little bit of attention to the spoken word that you recorded with the St. Louis Blues Society, A Letter
Yeah.
to My City. You want to talk a little bit about that? I absolutely loved it. When I was researching you, I found that, and I don't know, it was just a lot of like what we're talking about now. It kind of actually sums up a lot of the conversation.
I will talk about this. What's up? I don't talk about this song a lot. It's not because I'm not proud of it. It's because I'm a manager now, so I'll be trying to put that artist stuff on the back burner. But
Okay.
I picked up I picked up spoken word. I love spoken word, and I picked up writing lyrics from my dad. Like I told my dad wrote his own vocals, so I picked up writing music from him lyrically. And so I love spoken word. And so Jeremy Siegel Moss, our president of Blues Society, again back before I joined the Blues Society. I've been on the board for the last 4 years, I think now. But it, yeah, 4 years. But I recorded this song slightly right before I joined the Blues Society. I think the same year, but a couple of months before I joined, 2018. And Jeremy reached out to me. He was like, I want to know if you want to do a song, but I want you to do something. I don't want to force it on you. And I said, yeah. And so I went to Blue Locust Studios. Paul Niehaus was recording those, and I literally wrote that song 2 hours before I had to record it. I wrote it that morning. I woke up and I was like, okay, what is it gonna be? And I already knew the title of it. I knew the title was gonna be A Letter to My City because I was still all about St. Louis. Still, obviously I am, but then I was on that horse then, and so I think it's an amazing song, and a lot of it comes from um, some of the pain um, and bridges that we built after losing Michael Brown, after Michael
Hmm.
Brown's murder in Ferguson, and all of that. And I had to really, a lot of stuff I had to learn along the way so I could be a more powerful and a more better asset in that fight in that part of history. But that was inspired the song. So if you listen to the lyrics, that were a lot of it. You hear me talk, but also throw a little salt at us, because we sometimes can be our own biggest enemies too. And we get conflicted. Um, we get conflicted, like yeah, man. And so a lot of that stuff tied into the song too. And I'm super proud of it, and I'm glad that it continues to kind of spread on and move on. But I did it also to put equity real quick to talk about the St. Louis Blues Society. I'm on the board, but I'm also the Mission Fund director and coordinator for the St. Louis Blues Society. And the Mission Fund helps out artists in need, blues artists, especially our blues artists in need, but it helps out artists in need whenever they fall into hard financial times. We help with utility bills, medical bills, um, food, groceries, gas, and that's what the mission fund is. And when COVID hit, we had come up with a mission fund painting that we were going to do before COVID even hit, but we used it after it hit to start fundraising and raising money to put into artists' pockets during the pandemic. And the first print was my dad. We sold out of that in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And we were able to send out checks of $200 to 120 blues musicians. And
Wow.
then the Gateway Resilience Fund came and seen the work that we were doing and they had funds that they wanted to put towards the arts. They gave us an infusion of $25,000, so we were able to finish
Nice.
another $500 to those artists, in addition to open up the grant for more artists. They put another $25,000 in another
Wow.
month or so later. Overall, to date, we've raised over $90,000 for the St. Louis Blues Society Mission Fund. Every single dollar went out to musicians' pockets and grant awards up to $500. We're still doing the grants. You can go to stlouisbluessociety.org and find out more info about the Mission Fund. We're going to get ready to do another print again soon in a couple of weeks. But we're still facilitating that work, and we're still putting money. Every single penny goes right into these musicians, because a lot of these blues musicians, some of them don't qualify for RAC grants. And a lot of them don't have the paper trail to facilitate and show to qualify for these grants. So we needed to do this not only to take care of our own in the city, but also for artists just overall that kind of fall short of some of those guidelines that Music Cares and the Grammy Foundation and the Regional Arts Commission kind of put up for artists like that.
So for my last question, one of the very first things you talked about is that there's a lack of female instrumentalists. Are you working with, or doing anything to try to help change that dynamic, to try to reach out to women in the early stages of their development, to kind of mentor them along, to coach, to encourage?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I think one of the things that we did miss also, and it also kind of goes into how the industry was for a long time, is we didn't have a lot of men. I see black men for sure, but we didn't have a lot of men in general standing up for women in music, putting women in music on pedestals, showcasing women in music, whether they were vocalists or whether they were instrumentalists. We failed at that for a long time in the industry. And so for one of my biggest things that I do as a manager and as the brand is make sure that, we showcase and profile as many of the women in music as possible in this city. Because, they're the bridge, they're the bridges. Us as men, we've had an easy road when it comes to this industry for a long time. You know what I mean? So I think it's well due time that we pave that same road for a lot of women musicians. And then me having a daughter, it translated, easily as well, because I want her to also be proud of, not only her grandfather's legacy, but be proud of the legacy in general, and decide to maybe want to pick up and do something in music, whether it's playing the piano, playing the bass like Tonina, and seeing a different instrument in their hand other than just a microphone. Because so many women get just characterized into being singers and vocalists. So it's just making sure that you translate and put those type of musicians and artists on the front stage. I've also, for a long time, I did blues and schools programs too. I did one with the legendary Marsha Evans, who's one of the most legendary soul and R&B singers in this city, and blues singers in this city. And Marsha Evans and her coalition, she just lost her late husband, condolences to her, but she just lost her late husband, Jimmy Hines, who's a legendary bassist in this city as well. And her whole band, we were doing blues and schools program. And I told her the songs that would be awesome, because I wanted them to play them live and correlate to the program that we were presenting to the kids. We were going to elementary schools, and they're playing Soulja Boy, Crank That as a band. We have a drummer, a bassist, a guitar player, and Marsha.
Nice.
And then they'll turn around and play Ray Charles, or they'll turn around and play, the song that correlates to that. Hand Jive was a song that we correlated to Crank That. So we were doing Crank That for the kids that were doing the dance, and then how the hand jive goes back to the history of, rhythmic dances as well. And showcasing someone like Marsha, but even in the greater realm, someone that relates to you. Because when I went to those shows, and I'm the mouthpiece facilitating the show along, I had either I always wore Jordans, and I did that because the kids would correlate to shoes, obviously, and that's something that I would get their attention for at least the first 5 minutes because of these shoes. Now, it's up to me to keep it going from that. And so that was my way to relate. But for me to relate to the young girls and have women to be interested in blues and women to be interested in performing and being performing artists was having someone that they could relate to, and they could see and be like, man, she was dope. I want to do that when I grow up. I
Right.
want to be somebody that I can lead a band. And now, fast forward, we have a lot of extraordinary and strong women band leaders. But it's doing that work, continuing to do that work, and then just showcasing the women that you know in your city that are doing things that we've been doing for a long time, but they never had the opportunity of being showcased. And I think that's the primary key of making that work and making that change. It's on us men in the industry.
Understood.
To take care of, put them on point.
So, where can people find you? Where should people follow you? Everything that you're doing.
Oh yeah, for sure. You can follow me all on Facebook. The Townsend Agency, the Townsendx3 Agency, is on Facebook and Instagram as well. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram as well. You can find a lot of my amazing artists too. Zeta Lioness, Little Dylan, Denise Times, Rhoda G, the Midwest Avengers, LLManny, who just released an album too, Accurate, Nando SEL, Mvstermind, and then we'll continue to build, and I facilitate a lot of shows for a lot of artists too. I love Dan Valencia. Valencia's doing amazing work. They work with her.
I love her stuff.
You are doing amazing work and becoming such a force on your scene. And I'm proud to see you finally just come out of that shell.
Yes,
because people don't know that you've been putting in work for a while with Vote for Pedro, but now it's like the Lakers show, and now you're coming out on full. So your amazing voice and face to be coming on this scene as well. So it's a great time to be in St. Louis music, but we still got so much more work to do with each other.
Absolutely. And looking forward to doing that work with you, Mr. Alonzo. Thank you so much for being on with us today. I'm going to play just a little bit of that Letter to My City and then and end the show.
Cool. Thank you so much for having me. Love y'all. I appreciate it. It's an honor, and I hope to see you soon.
All right.
Here's my face. Hey you, how you doing? Lord knows I know things change. Hey you, how you doing? Lord knows I know things change. We can be that change. That change. Scratching and clawing and scratching. Times like a carbon copy. Hear the words, color again. But that's just to get a reaction. You know, an oppressed mind gives some the greatest of all satisfactions. Listen, an oppressed mind gives some the greatest of all satisfaction. Hey, yo, how you doing?
Thanks for joining us.
All right.
Appreciate you, brother.
Hey, appreciate you. Talk to you soon. Shout out Sean Corey.
City Jazz Sessions is brought to you by St. Louis City Jazz, a 501c3 company dedicated to music education and appreciation. The CEO is Magic Man 50, and for more ways to connect with City Jazz Sessions, visit cityjazzsessions.wixsite.com/St. Louis. The City Jazz Sessions team includes host, content director, and guest coordinator, jazz great Ronnie Barrage. Follow Ronnie at ronniebarrage.biz. Host, website designer, graphic artist, content director, and guest coordinator, singing sensation Leica. Discover more about Leica at leicamusic.com. Additional production services are provided by Lion